Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviriyam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The last section, certain remarkable truths or fundamental truths about the nature of existence had been presented by Lord Krishna. He had spoken that the eternal is unborn, uncreated, everlasting. And that which is everlasting, which always is the reality. And that which is the reality is the truth. So that is why it is said, God is truth. God is truth. Now the word truth, the word God has been used for the word truth. God is truth, synonymous. So once we use the word God, it implies that it is a conscious entity. The truth is a conscious thing. It has got consciousness. That's why the word God is used. God is truth. People may wonder why the word truth means it may be an abstract thing. But here, the word truth is equated with God, implying that that which is understood as the truth, which is everlasting, which is eternal, which is unborn, uncreated, which is ever existent, and therefore it is the reality and the truth, and this truth has got consciousness. And not only does it have consciousness, that's why the word God is used, and it exists. So God has got these three factors or attributes which can be assigned to him, that it has got consciousness. Of course, that which has got consciousness naturally has existence too. So the existence has consciousness. And more than these two, it has got one more added feature. God exists in his blissful nature. In his blissful nature. So, bliss is God. That is why Lord Buddha mentioned something beautiful. And that is Nirvanam Paramam Sukham. When a person attains to a state of nirvana, it is Paramam Sukham, it is great bliss indeed. When you attain to that state. So Sukha, or the blissful experience, can only be experienced by something which is, which exists. And once again, Lord Buddha has made a very remarkable statement, which is found in Udana, verse number 80, wherein this particular statement about the reality, about the truth of life, he mentions it. And he states that in the book of Udana, verse number 80, if not for the unborn, unmade, unconditioned, and uncompounded, there wouldn't be that which is born, which is made, which is compounded, which is compounded. So if not for that, this would not be. So there is something which is unborn, unmade, uncompounded, which is, and if not for that, the presence of that, this which is born, which is made, which is compounded, would not be. So that which is born, made, and compounded is the universe. That which is made, compounded, and is born is you. So if not for that, this would not be. So this is one of the most, once again, as far as the Buddha's teachings is concerned, it is one of the most metaphysical statements that he had ever made. If not for that which is uncreated and uncompounded, this which is created and compounded would not be there. So you are a compound. You know that very well. In your nature, you're a compound of many factors. You're a compounded entity. You would not be if not for that. Furthermore, you have got three characteristics. Just as much as we said, the divinity in existence, which is the reality, which is said to be God, in his godly state of existence, has got three features. That it has got consciousness, it has got existence, and it has got bliss and knowledge. Now, you two also have the same thing. You two have your consciousness. You have got a seeming existence. And you also have got a little bit of bliss. Because every creature in the world wants to exist. Why does it want to exist? Because in its, whether it's a worm or a human or a dog or an animal, everything wants to survive and exist because it loves to exist. So, and because it loves to exist because it derives a certain amount of happiness and joy in existing. If you ask any person in the world, do you want to live or die? He would reply and tell you back, don't ask such a ridiculous question. Of course, everyone wants to. So existence is full of, even your own human existence is full of joy. There is something blissful and nice about your existence, and you want to continue to exist. So characteristics of God are percolating into you. They are percolating in small measure, in small doses, they are percolating into you. So that is why you have got consciousness. You have got, it's sort of like a reflected or refracted consciousness that you have percolating through your mind. And God has existence. That is why it's percolating itself and you feel that I am. And at the same time, God's nature of being is full of bliss indeed. And you also like to exist, like to live. You love to exist. You love to live. So your joy of living may not be that wonderful as God's. But nevertheless, even a miserable creature, a worm, learns to survive. So everything according to its structure loves to exist. So therefore, these factors are all percolating into you. And Lord Buddha had very remarkably mentioned this. If not for that which is unborn, unmade, uncreated, and uncompounded, this which is you, which is made, which is compounded, which is created would not be. And the Buddhist will tell you that you are constituted of panchaskandhas. You're a compound of the 5 skandhas. That's what you are, a compounded entity as an individual. So therefore, this truth has been well enunciated by the wise, Tattva Darshibhihi. The wise have seen what is what. They've experienced the reality as the real and the unreal as unreal. Then, having said this much, in verse number 18, Lord Krishna continues and says, and furthermore, this also must be told to you, that you are existing in the world or continuing to exist in the world because of an energy within you. That energy is maintaining and propelling you and keeping you going in the world. That energy is the passion within you. Are the passions and the desire patterns which are there within you. The desire to know also is there within you. The desire, so amongst other desires, the desire to know also is there. So, these things keep on maintaining your human existence. And there is a beautiful section in the Karika of the Mundaka Upanishad, which states as Alada Shanti Prakarana, the section dealing with this. And it is the section as called as a fire, you're considered to be like a firebrand. You know, as firebrand, a stick. You ignite the stick and whirl it around. You whirl the stick around and it gives you a circular formation, a circular fire. It seems as if there is a circular fire, but really there is no circular fire there, but it is only an ignited stick which is being moved, rotated, and it has brought about an appearance due to its motion of energy as a circular fire. Really, there is no circular fire there. Similarly, in the same manner too, your experience and perception of this entire universe is correspondingly so. This energy within you has brought about a formation, is maintaining this formation called this universe. The world that you are seeing has appeared in front of you as a formation because of this energy there within you. And the moment you quenched, just like quenching the firebrand or dousing it, so also when you douse the energy content within you, you as a firebrand full of energy, you also get doused, and two things at the same time get doused. One is the external world gets doused, and secondly, you as an individual also, you also cease to be. So both of these, so then the shunya or the nothingness of both of these two things transpire. So that is to say, the formation of the universe, which is there in front of you, and you as an individual who is a formed being, you two also, both of you cease to be and collapse and are no more. And after that, what is left is the reality which is. So in this manner, the final truth has been brought out, that it is you who will have to work out your own salvation. From your passions, you've got to become dispassionate, acquire dispassion, and douse the energy content which is there within you. Only you can do it, nobody else. As far as you are concerned, you have got to do it. So you are at the center of this thing called avidya. The locus of avidya or ignorance is there, as we said yesterday. It is there in you. Because you have ignorance. And then and the counter opposite of ignorance is said to be vidya or knowledge. And this knowledge is, what is this knowledge? It is called truth awareness. This knowledge is nothing but the truth awareness. So as you keep on maintaining the truth awareness about your intrinsic divine nature, then this truth awareness goes and nullifies and neutralizes your human impressions and clears it out of your nature, along with all the energy content which is there within it. So in this manner, you get enlightened to your own reality. So thus, having said this much, in verse number 18, Krishna says, Antavanta ime deha nityasya uktaha sharirinaha anashino aprameyasya tasmat yudhyasva bharata. Oh, may you understand, Arjuna, Antavanta ime deha. These bodies have an end. Antavanta, they have got an end. They were born, they were created, and therefore whatever is born and created must have naturally an end. Antavanta ime deha. But nityasya uktaha sharirinaha. But that which is associated with this body of yours is nitya, is eternal. So there is a principle there which is there within you, which is ever existent. And that principle, which is your divine nature, is said to be nitya. It is eternal. Nityasya uktaha sharirinaha. So that which is indwelling within you. Now you have got three bodies. The gross physical body, with which you experience the external universe. Then you have the subtle body, with the help of which you have another universe, the dream world. So there is a dream individual who is experiencing the dream world with us in the subtle body. And then you have the causal body, which you experience in deep sleep. So in deep sleep, you know nothing, because in deep sleep, you're covered totally by ignorance. So that is why when you wake up from sleep, what do you say? I did not know anything. Automatically you say that, I did not know anything. That's the first statement you make, because you were covered by ignorance there. So in deep sleep, you neither know yourself, you neither know the world, you neither know God. These three factors you don't know. What is the difference between deep sleep and enlightenment? In enlightenment, you come to know who you are. Who you are. So here in deep sleep, you did not know neither you knew yourself, no God, nor the world. But no one ever says, I did not exist in deep sleep. Of course. You're not so you're the same man who went to sleep, who wakes up. And when you have a good sleep, you say, I had a blissful sleep. Now, where did you get the bliss? In sleep. That is why people like to sleep. Because they're experiencing bliss there. The world is not there. You are not there. You as an individual is not there. So that means, but nevertheless, you're experiencing bliss there. So therefore, in the waking time, so if you can consciously lose yourself and lose the world indeed and forget the world consciously, perhaps you may experience that bliss which you were unconsciously experiencing in deep sleep consciously. When you experience that bliss consciously, you are enlightened. So therefore, these three bodies are there, and there is one which is there within these three bodies, the gross, causal, and the subtle body. And that is said to be, so that is where Nitya Uktaha Sharirinaha. So that is said to be Nitya, eternal. That is eternal. So the bodies will disappear. The gross body disappears at the time of death, the physical death. The subtle body too disappears when you get enlightened. And of course, the causal body also disappears after that, along with that. So all the three bodies disappear, but you don't disappear. You are there. The reality of your existence is there. So therefore, he says, Nityaha, it is eternal. And Anashino. So it doesn't, Anashi, it doesn't undergo death, destruction, Anashino. Your reality, the truth of your being does not undergo death at any time. And it is Aprameyasya, Anashino Aprameya. Aprameya means you can measure everything, but the divine cannot be measured. Anything in the universe is subject to measurements. You can say what it is. You can measure it. Its dimensions can be measured in some form or the other. But Aprameya, that is, the divine is something which is beyond measure. You cannot measure it. Aprameyasya. So therefore, the only way to measure God is by God measure. By God measure. And there is a way to it. And that God measure, we will discuss it as time goes on. As we go on in subsequent verses, the implication of that God measure will be brought out. So, for the time being, may you understand that Aprameya, it cannot be conceived or measured by in any sense. Aprameya. Therefore, Yudhyasva Bharata. Therefore, O Bharata, O Arjuna, that's another name. In various words, Lord Krishna addresses Arjuna. So one of the appellations that he has given, or nickname that he has given to, and very significantly too, Arjuna is Bharatha. So Bharatha means the sign of the Bharat dynasty. The dynasty. He comes under the dynasty of kings. And then thereafter, even the word Bharata was the ancient word for India. India is a modern word which the Englishman gave. He has got, because he can't, so many words he can't twist it in his tongue. So he gives a new word or a new appellation for certain names. And so the word Bharata was the ancient name for India. And it is a very significant word. Ba means that which is prakasha, that which is full of light, full of brilliance, or is full of consciousness, because consciousness is full of light. And Rataha means those who revel in that light of consciousness, which is the divine. So the people who revel in the divine are said to be Bharatiyas. They are the people of Bharat, which was a very significant, relevant, ancient name for India. So once again, they have to bring back that name. It's a very significant word. So he says, Bharata, oh Bharata Arjuna, may you understand these truths, these divine truths which are being brought out. Then, in verse number 19, Ya enam veti hantaram, chainam manyate hatam, ubautana na vijanito, nayam hanti na hanyate. O Arjuna, Ya enam veti hantaram. He who thinks that he is the killer, veti hantaram. Yes, chainam manyate hatam. And he who thinks that he has been killed. Yes, enam manyate hatam, that he has been killed. He is the killer or he is killed. Ubautana vijanito. Both of them do not understand. Ubautana vijanito. Nayam hanti na hanyate. So this individual neither kills nor is killed. This individual. Because you have been lamenting all along, just before the battle took place, that I would be killing these people and they will be killed by me. So Lord Krishna is telling, don't worry about all that, the physical body. We are talking about higher metaphysics. So in that sense, he says, the Atman, the true Atman of each person is neither the killer nor is it killed. That may you understand. Then he continues this and says, as far as the nature of this, of the Atman is concerned, na jayate mriyate va kadachit, nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaka, ajo nityaha sashvatoyam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So in verse number 20, he says, because they are simple elementary verses, so therefore I'm running through. Na jayate mriyate va kadachit. This Atman of yours, which is your divine nature, na jayate, it's never born. Mriyate va kadachit. Never indeed does it get born or does it undergo death. No jayate, it's neither born nor does it undergo death. Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaka. And it is not that being born, it comes into existence. It is not so too. Because there are certain things which only when they having been born, they come into existence. But as far as the Atman is concerned, since it was not born, therefore, it doesn't come into that category, because everything which is created after creation comes into existence. But it is not so with respect to the Atman. that since it is unborn, uncreated, therefore it has always existed. It has always existed. Or in the another sense, that it is not that it having come into existence, thereafter it will cease to be. Such a contingency also will not transpire as far as the Atman is concerned. Because it was never born indeed. And then may you understand it is Ajaha. It is unborn. The Atman is unborn. Nityaha. It is eternal. It is eternal. Shashvataha. So Shashvata means it is constant in nature. Constant. So a thing which is constant does not undergo modification. Because in the world, everything which transpires in the world, anything which is born in the world, undergoes 6 categories, characteristics. It has 6 characteristics. Firstly, it gets born. Having been born, it comes into existence. Anything in the universe. Having come into existence, it grows. Having grown, it modifies. Having modified, it decays. And having decayed, it perishes. It dies away. So, but your Atman, your physical body is subject to all this, but not your Atman, not your. So the idea is, don't identify yourself with this physical body or the subtle body. But you are that which is unborn, Ajaha, Nityaha, you are eternal. So you can never perish. And Shashvataha, you don't change at all. Shashvata. So if that is the case, Shashvata, you exist without changing, you exist in the glory of your own being. Swe Mahimni Tishtati. God exists in the glory of his own existence. You may glory in the glory of what? Of your position, of your job. You may even glory in your house. Whether it is a mansion or a palace, you may glory in that. But as far as God is concerned, Swe Mahimni Tishtati. It glories itself in its own glory, in its own glory. It doesn't require anything to glorify it. So its very being itself is glorious. That is why hymns are sung, especially in churches, to the glory of God, because God is glorious. You can't describe what the glory of God is. All that you know is you use some words called glory and glory God. So God exists in the glory of his own existence. And so therefore, Shashvataha, it doesn't undergo any change, any transformation. And I am Puranaha. So the word Purana means it is ancient. You know, even though it is ancient, it is ever new indeed. It is ever fresh. Everything in the world undergoes decay. Everything undergoes decay. But as far as the divine is concerned, it is as fresh as it was, as it has always been. So therefore, it's the ancient principle. Ancient, which has always been, which has always existed, in the glory of its own beingness. And therefore, you are no ordinary person. All that you too also have to be gloried in the glory of your own being as the Atman. So therefore, Arjuna, Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. May you understand, even when this body of yours is killed, huh? The Atman na is neither killed nor is the killer. Na hanyate. No. Then he continues in verse number 21. Veda avinashinam nityam ya enam ajam avyayam katam sa purusha partha kam gatayati hanti kam. Veda avinashinam. May you understand. Now he's giving you in many verses, he's trying to fortify this knowledge within you. You know, when you put a post in the ground, what do? You hammer the soil around it to fortify it. So here also, Krishna is hammering various truths so that the knowledge gets fortified within you, unshakable, just like the post which is put, and then you give it a final shake, whether it shakes. And if it doesn't shake, you are satisfied that the post remains in the glory of its post. So here also, this understanding is being given to you in various verses to fortify this knowledge. So Veda avinashinam. So you are Veda avinashinam. So you are free of vinasha. You are free. You don't get destroyed. You are indestructible. Avinashina. Nityam, eternal. Enam ajam. And this Atman is enam ajam. It is unborn. Avyayam. It's free. It doesn't decay. That being the case, katam sa purusha partha kam gatayati hanti kam. In what manner, O sa purusha, katam sa purusha, in what manner can the person, O partha, kam gatayati hanti kam, in what manner kills whom, and is killed by whom? Hanti kam. Kills whom and kam hanti, kam gatayati, and in what manner do you kill it? You can't. In no way can you do that. So the word Purusha has been used here. Katam sa Purusha. So this person, sa Purusha. So the word Purusha also means here, this indwelling principle is called the Purusha. So Purusha means that which is full, that which is self-complete. Purusha. The word Purusha, that's the meaning of the word Purusha. Purusha. It is self-complete, whole and one. And where does it abide? Purusha, Purnatvat, Purushayanatva, Purushaha. So that Purnatvat, it is full. And that Purusha which is full, self-complete, is said to be Purushayanat. It is abiding in this body, this Purusha. Therefore, that being the case, you cannot cause the destruction of this Purusha indeed. Then, in verse number 22, he continues. Now, the verse number 22 is very interesting. It speaks of the transmigration of the soul. So here you get a scriptural evidence for the understanding that there is a soul which transmigrates from body to body. And this is beautifully outlined here. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya navani grinnadi naro aparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnan anyani samyati navani dehi. Dehi, the individual self. What does he do? Just as vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya. Just as Vasamschi, he vacates. What type of? He vacates this old body. When the body has become old, this particular body. So the indwelling self, the Dehi, when the body has become old or served its purpose, so Vasamsi Jirnani, this old body of yours which has become old, Yata Vihaya, having given it up, Navani Grinnadi Naro Aparani, and it takes on to another body. So it's very clear by this statement, Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jirnan, Anyati Samyati Navani Dehi. So here also, that's an example he's giving. Vasamsya Jirnani Yata Vihaya. Just as much as when you give up your old clothes, Vasamsi Jirnani, old clothes, they have served their purpose. Yata Vihaya, Navani Grinnade, you take on to new clothes. And you will not give up the old clothes until you have acquired the new clothes. You will not go naked. So you will wait for the arrival of the new clothes. And having obtained the new clothes only, then you will discard the old clothes. Now, this particular line is very significant. The same way also, Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jirnani Anyati Samyati Navani Dehi. Similarly, too, also, this indwelling Dehi, the indwelling self, having given up this decrepitude old body which has served its purpose, Anyani Samyati Navani, he takes on to a new body, a new fresh body he takes on to. So this is an example which is being given here. Now there is a little secret here. Just as much as you do not discard your old clothes until the new clothes have come into your hands. Only when they have come into your hands will you dare to leave the old clothes. You don't want to go naked. So in the same way also, when there's a great mystery here, a subtle mystery. In the same way also, when the time for your departure from this body, so the word death is a wrong word. The more correct word is departure. You depart. You depart from this body. Just as much as you depart from a house which has served its purpose. So a house which has served its purpose, you depart from the house and take on to another house, a new house. So here also, this body is like a house in which your individual self, the individuality is residing. And therefore, this person, when he departs from this physical body, he will not depart until he has got another body. Another body has been prepared for him elsewhere. Another body for this person. Now there's a great truths being, very secretive truths being revealed in this particular section. While you are living your life in this body, every day of your life, you are building your future body to be. The type of future body that you are going to have when you exit this world. When you exit this world, you can have three forms of exit. For the unenlightened man, for the unenlightened person, you will have three throws of exit. One is you can go to the heavens of returns. Secondly, you can be reborn immediately, or you can go to hell and then come back. So, in this process, while here itself, you are preparing your future body to be. Your future body to be is being prepared by you in a very subtle, mysterious manner. Because when you depart from this body, you cannot go naked. You have to go through a space shuttle, just as much as you go through a space shuttle and get docked in another sphere of existence. We say you have to go to the heavenly region. To traverse from the earth plane to the heavenly regions, you have to traverse through a space shuttle. And the space shuttle is a replica of the future body to be which you are going to have in the heavens. On the other hand, if a person is going to hell, there also he'll be preparing a body corresponding to the type of body that he will get in hell. So by his hellish deeds, now this is something which is not actively presented and projected in the world. Everybody talks about heavens, but very few people, though it is mentioned in the scriptures, talk about hell and what goes on in hell and how you get there, and what is the vehicle with which you go there, you arrive there, and what is the vehicle, the space shuttle that you take to go to heavens too, or the type of space shuttle that you take in order to come back to this earth plane again immediately, without either going to heavens or to hell. Directly you can come back here, directly. If there is no need for you to go to heavens, you don't have to go to heavens. After all, what is heavens? It is a pleasure resort, nothing more than that. So when you depart from this, you will get a body suitable to have your pleasure resort in the heavens. But if you are going to the hell, you will get a corresponding body suitable for you to abide in hell, not permanently, but for some time, and to experience the horrors and agonies of what you had done on planet Earth. And this truth has been well portrayed in the Tiger Balm Garden in Singapore. In Singapore, they have a Tiger Balm Garden in which they have graphically portrayed what happens to persons who go to hell, what type of experiences they have. So therefore, when you depart from this particular Earth's field, you are preparing your space shuttle in which you will exit this physical body, because your subtle body, which is the subtle individual, cannot live by itself. It requires an indwelling house at all times. You're not a vagabond. This soul of yours is not a vagabond out on the homeless. It's not a vagabond staying outside on the streets. This soul of yours, it is not so. So therefore, when you exit this body, it has to exit housed in another body, corresponding to, as you may call it, a space shuttle. This little space shuttle, which will take you to your future body to be, which is a replica. It's a replica of the future body you are going to get. And that's a space shuttle. So in this shuttle, you will depart from this earth field and go there according to the ways you have, and you're preparing it. No one is, you are yourself preparing it. How mysterious life is. By your good words, your good thoughts, your good deeds, your good feelings, you are generating and preparing this body, future body to be. And the future space shuttle also is being prepared by you correspondingly. The future body there and the space shuttle with which you are going there, both of them are being prepared by you. So that when you exit this body, your space shuttle is ready, and then you dock onto that and proceed to wherever you have to go for your further experience. So therefore, this is the remarkable subtle truth contained in this verse. So just as much as the person vacates this old house, he obtains another new house. Navani Dehi. So what is there to grieve over this, O Arjuna? It is a very natural phenomena. So no one ever dies. No one ever dies. The only time you really die, you know when? When you get enlightened. When you get enlightened. So what a wonderful thing. When you get enlightened, your individuality collapses. You lose your individuality. That's why it is said, when you lose yourself, you will find true life. That's the meaning there. So therefore, Arjuna, when you depart from this world, just like, so the idea of transmigration of the soul is being indicated here in this particular verse. It's a very important verse as far as that is concerned, to make you understand. And therefore, nobody has to be afraid of death. It's only vacating a house. Vacating a house, no more than that. So you can, when your present house has served its purpose and it has become old, only old people know how terrible it is to be old. With all the aches and pains and everything, only when they are old will they know. When you are young, you don't understand the plight of the old man. So therefore, you gladly exit this world to get a new body, a new fresh body. Navani, that's why Navani Dehi, you get a new body. So that's very good for a new series of experiences. Then in verse number 20, this is verse number 22, 23 now. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chai enam kledayanti apo, na soshayati marutaha. So therefore, nainam chindanti shastrani. This Atman cannot be cleaved, chindanti shastrani, by any, no weapons can, chindanti can kill this or injure this body of yours. Nainam chindanti shastrani, na enam dahati pavakaha, even the fire cannot burn it. This Atman of yours, this subtle body of yours, this subtle body and your true nature too, na enam dahati pavakaha, even the fire cannot burn it. Na cha enam kledayanti apo, even the waters cannot wet it. Na soshayati marutaha, even the wind cannot dry it. So that means you as a person, as an individual, whether you are in your true Atman, of course the elements, the five elements have no effect upon you. They don't touch you at all. You are beyond the five elements. They cannot do anything to you. And then at the same time also, as far as your subtle body is concerned, it's a different issue altogether. So therefore, enam chindanti shastrani. So the weapons cannot cleave the Atman, cannot burn it, cannot wet it, nor dry it. So you are beyond the five elements. Your existence as the Atman is beyond all this. Achedyoyam adahyoyam akledya asosya evacha Nitya Sarvagataha Sthanuhu Achaloyam Sanatanaha. So, therefore, this Atman of yours is Achedya, it cannot be injured. Adahya, it cannot be burned. Akledya. Asosya, it cannot be dried. Evacha Nityaha, it is eternal. Nityaha, eternal. Eternal. Sarvagataha. Sarvagataha means it went everywhere. It is not that it went everywhere. That's literally it means. But it is everywhere. So this Atman of yours is everywhere. Sarvagataha. That means wherever the space is, there your Atman is. The infinite space which is all around you, that is pervaded and permeated by your Atman. Sthanuhu Achaloyam Sanatanaha. And it is Sthanuhu, it is Sthanuhu means it is like a pillar. Sthanuhu, pillar. And a pillar is unshakable. You can't shake a pillar. So that means it is firmly established in the glory of its own beingness. That's what the Atman is. So if it is firmly established in the glory of its beingness, all that you have to do is be it. That's all. You have to just be the Atman. Sthanu Achalaha. And you are Achala, immobile. You don't have any movement. Achalaha. Sanatanaha. Sanatanaha is everlasting. You're everlasting. You always were. You're always existing. And Achalaha, you cannot move like a mountain which is Achala. It is firmly rooted. It is as it is. It is and like a post, it is established in the glory of its own being. You don't shake from your own being. There is no movement there. There is no movement there. You are absolutely self-absorbed. In the glory of your own being. So by these words, Sthanuhu Achaloyam Sanatanaha, hint is being given to you for you to also be so. So all that you have to do is just be the Atman. Just be the Atman. How to be? You are firmly established in yourself. Just be yourself. And do not oscillate or vitiate from your natural state of beingness, of being. And your everlasting Sanatana, be in this state as long as possible. So in this manner, you too also will be established in the glory of your own being. That is why these words have been given to you, so that you can, it is not only giving you the nature of the Atman, it is also in an indirect manner hinting to you that you too also could establish yourself in your Atman nature by being totally self-absorbed in your beingness, in your existence. So once you are able to appreciate that you are all these factors put together, you will naturally tend to be so. Naturally tend to be so and be so. That's all. Tend to be so and be so. Then, in verse number 25, Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate. Tasmat evam viditva enam na anusochitum arhasi. Avyaktoyam. You as the Atman, or the Atman as such, avyakta, you cannot manifest it by any known means of evidence. With your eyes, you can see something. So what was not present to you, if you open your eyes and see, it will become manifest to you. That's evidence. By direct perception. It's an evidence of knowledge by direct perception. But as far as the Atman is concerned, it is avyakta. You cannot manifest the Atman by any means of knowing. Your senses cannot comprehend it. Your mind cannot conceive it. By any known means of evidence can you comprehend it. So it becomes avyakta, unmanifest. It cannot be made manifest by any one of the known ways of knowing. By any known process of evidence, it cannot be conceived and understood. Avyakta. And therefore, avyaktoyam. So it is said, by any other pramana, ways of knowing, you cannot get to know it. The eyes can hear something, the ears can hear something. So by that process, you get a knowledge of something. But and the mind can conceive something, but as far as the Atman is concerned, none of these methods are applicable there. Therefore, it is avyakta. It cannot be made manifest by any one of the known means of knowing. You've got to drop all that. Leave all that. And then it is, I am achintya. You cannot even think of it. You cannot think what the Atman is. It is neither big nor small, nor this or no that. So it is none of that. Achintyoya. You cannot think of the Atman. Now he is giving a hint here. Lord Krishna is giving a hint. And what is that hint? Since it is achintya, unthinkable, so the only way to think of the unthinkable is not to think of it. See the whole secret. The only way to think of the unthinkable is not to think of it. The only way to conceive the inconceivable is not to conceive anything. Is not to conceive anything. Just as much as it is said that long ago in England, about 120 years ago or 150 years ago, there were two great prime ministers of England. One was Disraeli, the other was Gladstone, and they were both great orators. And first Disraeli was the prime minister, and thereafter Gladstone became the prime minister of England. And when he rose up in the parliament to give his maiden speech, he was so flustered that he began his maiden speech as the prime minister by stating that I conceive, and I conceive. And immediately, Disraeli, the ex-prime minister, got up and said, our honorable prime minister from Ireland has conceived thrice but brought forth nothing. So also, as far as you are concerned, don't ever try to conceive Brahman. So if you try to conceive Brahman, you cannot conceive it. So therefore it is said, avyaktaha, it is unmanifest, inconceivable. Brahman is unmanifest, inconceivable, and achintyaha, it is unthinkable. So therefore, the only way to think of Brahman, the divine, or the Atman is not to think. By not thinking, you're thinking. And when you are in that state, in that non-thinking state, one more thing you have got to do. Achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate. And it is said to be avikara. Avikara means, so vikara is to modify and change. Vikara, it undergoes modification from one state to another state. It undergoes modification. So here, avikaryoyam, a hint is also being given to you that when you do not think of anything or do not conceive anything, then at the same time, keep on maintaining this state constantly without modifying. Avikara, without it undergoing any modification, constantly keep on maintaining this flow of awareness. So when you maintain this flow of awareness, this is what is called as meditation. You get the whole point? How ingeniously Lord Krishna is introducing the concept of meditation or meditative awareness by using these three words to make you comprehend as to what and how to go about in your meditations, and thereby how you could be established in the glory of your own being, which is indicated in the previous verse. Swayam mahimni tishtati. In the glory of your own being, you get yourself established, well-rooted in it. And how do you get rooted in it? By being silent, by being quiet, and at the same time maintain the flow of this silent awareness. So when you maintain the flow of this silent awareness, then you are getting more and more established in the glory of your own being. So therefore, tasmat evam viditva. So therefore, having understood this, enam na anusochitam arhasi. Therefore, do not grieve. Na anusochitam arhati. You don't deserve to grieve anything about this Atma. Everything is in good order. Don't worry about it, oh Arjuna. That's what he's saying in this particular verse. No, anusochitam, don't grieve about it. After all, people come and go. They come to exist for some time and they go away, disappear after some time. What is there to grieve over that? No, anusochitam arhati. While you in the reality of your own being is the Atman, and just abide in your Atman. And how to abide in your Atman has been mystically worded here in a very ingenious manner by Krishna. Om Tat Sat.